All right, folks, welcome back to United We Strike, our radio marathon broadcast that takes place the second Saturday of each month, although next month, folks, it will be on the 15th because we are building toward the strike, the global 3-day strike, April 15th through the weekend, possibly longer. If we get enough support, we can change our world without firing a shot. Now, we're going to be broadcasting a UK section. So we hope that you're all comfortable. Get ready because we're introducing you now to Andrew Johnson from checktheevidence.com. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Karen, very much.
Well, I know that you have all sorts of things that you'd like to share with us, so I'm going to get out of your way right now. And thank you for being part of this. And here you go, Andrew Johnson. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone who's listening. I'd like to say thanks to UWS Radio for inviting me to do this slot. This is something of a new sort of departure for myself. I'm more used to being a speaker on a program rather than hosting the program myself. I'd like at this point immediately to make a kind of dedication to the people in Japan who have been going through these terribly distressing events that we've seen unfolding, and I want to talk a little bit about things around that. I'm sure people are picking up a lot of the news about this terrible disaster which is unfolding before us, but I also want to look at some other topics which I think are related to what's happening there, and how we can perhaps change our view of things in future so that we can actually have a completely different world where these sort of things, if they do happen, would never cause the kind of damage that they are causing now. Really, I suppose with this sort of theme, I'd like to just start by reading out a statement from 1997, and this is by Defense Secretary William Cohen, and he was talking at some conference. I haven't got the exact reference, but you can Google this for yourself. He pointed out that others, as in terrorists, are engaging even in an eco-type of terrorism where they can alter the climate, set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. So there are plenty of ingenious minds out there that are at work finding ways in which they can wreak terror upon other nations. It's real, and that's the reason why we have to intensify our counter-terrorism efforts. Now, this of course was said in 1997, 4 years before the terrible day of 9/11, which, as Karen said in the introduction, I will probably talk a little bit about shortly, because I've done a lot of research into those events. But we have to stop and consider whether William Cohen was actually setting up people using a method of predictive programming. In other words, putting statements out into the public arena, which would then influence their thinking, so that when such events like the one we're seeing unfolding in Japan right now happened, they would be programmed to view it in a certain way. Now, a lot of people have been talking recently with the terrible events also in Haiti and in China. I think that was in 2008. And then we saw a less talked about earthquake in Honduras in 2009, which I have a friend who lives over there who was in the middle of that 7.2 earthquake. And we've had several others since. So we have to ask ourselves how many of these events are natural and how many of them are being, to some degree or other, engineered. There is good evidence, for example, that the US Navy were involved in an exercise near Haiti just before that earthquake struck. There's also the very unusual characteristic of the Haiti earthquake, whereby the Dominican Republic, which was only, I think, something like 100 or 150 miles away, received no effects of the earthquake at all. So in other words, the earthquake seemed to be targeted over a very tiny area, really. And then we had the resulting sort of political upheaval and takeovers, which I don't know a lot about, but it seemed like there was some type of power grab going on there in the wake of the earthquake. But my interest in this sort of thing has really been heightened because of Dr. Judy Wood's discovery around the time of 9/11. There was this hurricane off the coast of New York City, Hurricane Erin, which was reported by two of the news networks, but only one of them reported by name on the morning of 9/11, and two of them didn't report the hurricane at all, even though it had been travelling in a straight line towards New York City for about a period of about 4 days from Bermuda. So people should look into this because although UWS Radio are covering some very important issues, I think these are issues that obviously affect all of us very, very greatly. And if we have a group among us that can actually steer hurricanes, then what exactly are they capable of? And I think I'm going to start by trying to play a clip from a fairly recent Red Ice radio show. And this interview was recorded by Henrik Palmgren, and they have he runs a website called Red Ice Radio, and this was from the 25th of January this year. And I don't want to sort of confuse matters because I feel I'm in danger of confusing matters slightly by playing this clip because it talks about HAARP. Everyone talks about HAARP. Now, I don't think HAARP was involved in the events of 9/11. I think I'm fairly convinced that it wasn't, or certainly not the one in Gakona, Alaska. But what you're going to hear in this clip is a chap called Gary Vay telling his story about how he became aware of a second HAARP facility. And I don't know if Rick's there. I'm going to try and play this clip now, but if Rick's there and it doesn't work, then we can see if he can get it to play. But I'm going to try and play this now. So it's all a bit experimental for me. So apologies if this doesn't quite work.
The HAARP installation that I was taken to was not the one in Gakona, Alaska, the one that has a website and most people, have seen pictures of. The one that I was taken to was in a place called Poker Flats, which was north of Fairbanks. And I was taken to this installation by two former Navy people who worked there and actually constructed it, and wanted to tell me anonymously that this installation had been fired up and used, and that it had created harm to the atmosphere and had actually hurt some people. And they actually took me around to see the installation, and then later took me to see some of the indigenous people up there that had suffered from the testing of this apparatus on two occasions where they used billions of watts to energize it. And this was later seen echoed in some of the ancient texts, when they talked about a phenomena called burning from the sky, and some of the ancient texts had prophesied a hole being created in the protective layer of the sky and burning of people. So it was kind of a coincidence.
So that's interesting. Kind of a second HAARP type facility than in Poker Flats. Do you know if this basically had the same function as the one we do know about it? This is the same atmospheric heater technology we're talking about, right?
Right, and I don't really want to claim to be an expert in HAARP or anything. I was shown the installation so that I could write an article about it and say that it had been used and that it had caused harm, which I did. I wrote a story and then got a reaction from the NSA wanting to know who had told me about this because they had violated their national security oath. It was kind of a touchy situation.
The story that Gary Vay was telling there was of going to a second secret HAARP facility, which was north of Fairbanks, whereas the Kokona one is south of Fairbanks, Alaska. My point in playing this clip really is, I mean, if you go and Google this story, Gary Vay has written a book about this event under the name Dan Eden, and you can get this book for free. He takes it a donation for it, but you can basically get it for a minimal cost. The point about me playing that clip is this was an example of a secret installation which apparently nobody knew about. And after Gary Vay had been taken to this facility, he was contacted by people in the NSA wanting to know who'd actually shown him, who'd disclosed the location of this facility. So it's really just to give an indication that there is secret technology that we are beholden to. Things are being done without our knowledge or consent, and these are things which are not just things like spending on various small projects. These are huge things which are very, very dangerous. The Gary Vay story says how he met locals that were affected by the operation of this other HAARP facility. And so I've come to the conclusion, particularly with the data from 9/11 about Hurricane Erin, which proves to me that the hurricane was indeed maneuvered and it was put in place, that there is environmental modification technology in use. Now, how much of it is used to create events like we saw in Haiti or currently in Japan, I really don't know. That's more speculative. But as regards 9/11, I have no doubt that this technology was used on 9/11. Now, the other thing is that this is all to do with energy. This is something that people don't really talk about very much beyond the realms of, for example, peak oil, or the terrible oil disaster in the Gulf last year, which is still essentially ongoing in terms of its effects. So people are not really focused on what I call the energy cover-up. But a person that was focused on this area, I'm going to try and play another clip here and hope it doesn't go into some strange playback mode halfway through, is a clip from an interview with Dr. Eugene Malov. Now, Dr. Eugene Malov, again, he connects into this energy story in quite a big way, because in 1989, he became aware of the phenomenon called cold fusion, which is more correctly termed low-energy nuclear reactions. And this was basically discovered by two chemists, Pons and Fleischmann, Stanley Pons and Martin Fleischmann, world-class chemists. They'd been researching for 5 years into this effect that they'd observed in the laboratory, where they were getting anomalous amounts of heat, and quite a lot of it in proportion to the size of the experiment, out of their equipment, which was relatively simple. It involved some heavy water and a palladium electrode, and I think they were using lithium hydroxide. And Malov discovered that when the university he worked for, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, when they tried to reproduce the experiment of Pons and Fleischmann, they essentially wrote a report to debunk the work of Pons and Fleischmann, but in actuality their own experiment had discovered a similar effect to that Pons and Fleischmann had. In other words, for at least part of the time the experiment ran, they were getting out more energy than they put in. And Malov realized that the people that put together this report debunking Pons and Fleischmann had basically lied about their data and had tried to cover this up. So instead of this being a huge discovery, it then became a huge battle of egos, essentially.
Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone who's listening. I'd like to say thanks to UWS Radio for inviting me to do this slot.
Checktheevidence.com. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Karen, very much.
Well, I know that you have all sorts of things that you'd like to share with us, so I'm going to get out of your way right now. And thank you for being part of this. And here you go, Andrew. Through the weekend, possibly longer, if we get enough support, we can change our world without firing a shot. Now, we're going to be broadcasting a UK section. So we hope that you're all comfortable. Get ready, because we're introducing you now to Andrew Johnson from... All right, folks, welcome back to United We Strike, our radio marathon broadcast that takes place the second Saturday of each month, although next month, folks, it will be on the 15th, because we are building toward the strike, the global 3-day strike, April 15th.
It's something of a new sort of departure for myself. I'm more used to being a speaker on a program rather than hosting the program myself. I'd like at this point immediately to make a kind of dedication to